All right. How many times have you felt that living for God is just not worth it? You pray unselfishly and with the right spirit, and yet your prayers go unanswered. You've asked, no, beg God to help you with this out of control thing in your life. It could be anything: anger, depression, confusion, some injustice. I mean, just something. But you ask God to help you because it's just like spinning out of control, and He hasn't helped you. Are you bound by memories of past abuse? Are you paralyzed by some current fear? Are you consumed with some secret sin? Are you tormented with some problem that you just can't overcome? You control yourself in public, but you worry that you won't be able to keep up the appearances much longer. Some people lose their futures living in the past, but you don't. Your past was much better. You live in the now, and your situation stinks right now. Will you ever overcome this? Is there any hope? You've heard me teach that you need to learn the Torah because it will fix anything and everything. So why hasn't your situation changed, you ask? Well, the name of this message is You Don't Have to Live Like This. Please stand and cover yourself for the reading of our scripture. For those of you who may not know, I'm tethered and can't stand. It's not a law, it's just a tradition. But we like to hold the tradition as closely as possible because our Messiah did it. All of his disciples did it. Their disciples did it. We want to be as much like our Messiah as we can. Today's scripture is Meshalim, that's Proverbs, chapter 30, verse 8, which says, Shav udevar kazav harhek mimini resh va'osher al titen lihat rifeni lechem hu ki. All right, so you may be seated. Our first word is shav, generally translated as vanity or wickedness or iniquity, something like that. It's used that way. It's used of people who commit some iniquity or do some wicked act. It's spoken of wicked men. That man was shav, he was wicked. It's even spoken of calamities that come to the people they consider wicked. Destruction that somebody suffers in their life. Their house burns to the ground, so there must be some hidden wickedness, some shav in their life. But shav is more than that. It's of falsehood. It's of lies. And lies and falsehood in Hebrew are compared to emptiness and vanity. Because it's all lies really ever lead to is emptiness and vanity. All of the lies that are being told to the American population, they're telling us that our unemployment is 7% when we know it's already higher than it was during the Great Depression. Because they believe that as long as everybody in America perceives that things are okay, people won't panic, go take the money out of the bank, and end the things sooner than it has to end. But in the end, it'll be vanity because all you're doing is putting off the inevitable. This nation will fall financially if we don't get on a different path. And I would think it'd be better to tell the truth and tell everybody, why don't we stop blowing our money and start spending it wisely and start paying down our debt, because it can be done. I've heard the experts say it can be done. But instead, they go on with the lies because once they start it, now they feel like they can't go back. Well, in the end, then, if it all crashes to the ground when it didn't have to, is that not vain? Is that not vanity, emptiness, nothingness? Because it leads to disappointment. It leads to lost hope. All right, so there's what shav is all about. Our next word is udavar, and you should recognize that. Davar, it's a word. Devarim in plural, words. Of course, this isn't plural, this is davar. It's a word, it's speech, discourse, especially it is a promise, something promised, a precept, something something like a edict, a royal mandate, a saying, a sentence of a wise man, especially the word of Yahweh, an oracle. Now you understand when they talk about a word of Yahweh or word of God, that's not shalom. No, that's a Hebrew word. Now, if God says, if you live according to the Torah, he'll give you peace that passes all understanding, that's a word of God. The whole sentence is a word, right? And then the whole book is called the Word, right? So that's what they mean by that. It's not a single word. It's a gathering of words to bring a certain idea or perception or meaning. That's a word. And it's used of councils. It's even used of rumors. Um, yeah, that pretty much covers it. We have kazav as our next word, and that's lie. What happens in Hebrew when you're using words that have similar meanings or basically the same meaning? Yes, they're trying to make it more important. They're putting an explanation on it. But this is more straightforward. This is about falsehood. This is about lying. Anything that deceives. So when they say anything that deceives, you got to get this, you got to understand that not telling somebody something that you know could have an effect on an outcome is a lie. So uh, when I was in the music business, our band was offered a major record deal. And somehow, we still don't really know how it happened, but somehow the lead singer turned it into a record deal for himself and convinced us that it would be a better deal for all of us. So we we agreed, and then the next thing we know, we're all starting to think, wait a minute, is this really going to help us, or is it going to help him? So then we all got worried that he was just going to fire us all. And so I just asked him face to face, are you going to fire us? Now, our band, I better not say the name of it because you might know who I'm talking about. I'm trying not to name names here. But his initials are, no, I'm just kidding. um, we'll just call it Some Dude's Mondo Cool Band. That was who we were, right? Some Dude's Mondo Cool Band. So I say to this guy, are you going to fire us? He says, he looks me in the eye and he says, God is my witness. I should have known we were in trouble at that moment because the guy wasn't religious. But he says, God is my witness. What I say? Some dude's monocool band goes where I go. Well, we were all stupid enough to think, oh, all right, so he's not going to fire us because we're all in that band. Well, no, he meant the name of the band because he actually owned the rights to it. We didn't own the rights to the band. He did. So he fired us all, put different people in there, and kept some dude's monocool band, and it went everywhere he went. That's a lie, by the way. Situational truth is a lie. Holding back the truth is a lie. And that's the idea here is that anything that deceives is a lie. Deluding somebody by, giving somebody false hope, that's a lie. And it's even used of idols. And generally, when idols, they call it vanity, right? So these two words mean almost exactly the same thing. Then we have harhek, which is far, it really is far away, far off. It's like the children of Israel when they were at Sinai and God started speaking and the mountain shaking and the fire and the smoke and the dark cloud and the whole thing. Everybody's like, woo! Started back, get as far away as they can. This is the word, harhek, this is the word. It's used in Hefil, which is a grammar thing in Hebrew that we can't explain in English. There's no way to truly explain this in English. But it's to be far away, far, far away. It's same. The Hefil is exactly the same as PL. And in PL it says to move far off, to remove yourself from the situation. We're behind you, Rob. Way behind you, Rob. All right. There's a pretty good example in Tehillim, which is Psalm 193:12 says, He, speaking of God, He has removed our transgressions far away from us, which is, of course, the idiomatic way of saying He has forgiven us. It's not that they go away. This idea that the Christians have that your sins are thrown as far as the east is from the west, and then they go around saying it's as though you never sinned. That as though you never sinned. No, that's a terrible way to say that, because that gives people the idea that they can go around committing all the sin they want to, go say, please forgive me, Jesus, and then it's all over. I'm going to need something from my throat. Then it's all over. It didn't happen. So they go out and commit murder. Oh, no, I asked for forgiveness. This is all that didn't happen. You should let me out of jail. The Christians are buying into that. No. David, the man who had an affair with another man's wife, got her pregnant, and then had the man killed to try to cover it up, he will be an adulterer and a murderer for all eternity. Moshe, the man who killed a man because he was treating a Jew badly, he will be a murderer for all eternity. No, the spray stuff. But what they mean by it's as though it never happened, as far as the east is from the west. What they mean by that is you're covered over by that chuppah that the blood is found on. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look at some of my teachings on the feast. It'll explain it to you. I can't do that in front of the camera. All right. Anyway, the root of this word, the one that we're looking at, is harhek. That's the word, harhek. It's from rahak. That's the root. It's to go away far, to recede from anyone. The primary sense is to thrust away. So this is like running away from something or being pushed hard away from something. We need to understand that, because it doesn't lose that idea just because it's used in he feel. It's still connected to that idea of being thrust away, of being repelled. All right, so then mimani is the Hebrew way of saying from me. It's being repelled far away from me. Resh sounds a lot like Rosh. This word is used for poverty. It's from the root rush, which is to be needy, to suffer want, to be poor. This is pretty much what you think of when you think of poverty. That's followed with va-osher, which is and, the va being and, the word osher being riches. Ashar is the root of this word. It's properly it's to be straight, to prosper, to be happy, especially to be rich. Well, that doesn't really tell people in the West, what do you mean to be straight? I know what it's to prosper and be in health as God, as your soul prosper. We all get this Western idea of prosperity. The Eastern idea of prosperity is to have children. Children was all about the prosperity, because if you had the money to be able to support children, and lots of them, you were wealthy. In the Roman world of this same period, men liked to have more than one wife, because it showed that they were well off enough. Not only could they raise a bunch of kids, they could have a bunch of wives and could even afford it if they started getting divorces. It was a sign of wealth to them. But that's a little bit distorted, don't you think? To prosper is to live right, to live on a straight path, and not to have to worry about having the punishments that come down when you don't live right. That was the true prosperity. And people who lived like that tended to be able to raise lots of kids. All right, our next word is all. It's and not really. It's a sound-alike word, of course, because all is usually upon or on, that kind of thing. But this is a sound-alike word, and it's the negative article. It's used for not or no. It's not a very commonly used one, but it's in there. It's followed by the word titen, which is given. It's from the root natan. It's where we get the name Nathan, because they put the H after it. I still don't know why they put an H after it, because there's no TH sound in Hebrew, never was, should never be. Can't say that there won't ever be, but there shouldn't be, right? Because it's Natan. But then Natan became Nathan, and then Nathan became Nathan. Given. Nathaniel is given by God because the L added to the Nathan at the end, Nathan L, Nathaniel, that's God given of God, or given to God or given from God. Could be either way. Nobody knows for sure. People will tell you they do, but they don't. All right, so it's to give, it's to cause to receive. How do you cause to receive? Well, the one example I like is what we used to call the Pentecostal handshake. You know, you take a little money and you fold it all up, stick it in the palm of your hand and be able to hold it like that. And then you go and shake somebody's hand and they'd be able to take it from your hand smoothly and quietly like it was some big top secret handshake or something. We called it the Pentecostal handshake. That's to cause someone to receive. And here's the way you don't call someone. You don't call them and say, hey, Rabbi Allen, I'm going to give you a boatload of money. Let's go out to eat and we'll talk about it. And then you go out to eat. And I'm telling you a true story. The guy opens up what I think was a camera box, and it was stuffed full of money, cash money. He said, yeah, I'm going to give that to you. And I was like, okay. And he's like, maybe tomorrow. I was like, why not now? I'm right here. But I never saw him again. He did not cause me to receive. He didn't give me anything in it except a heartburn. And I'm still not sure. I think we paid the check that night, didn't we? Just saying. Anyway, it's to give is also to deliver into the power of anyone. Like if you have a prisoner and you hand him, say the feds or say the local guys hand the prisoner over to the fed, the federal guys, that would be a good example of that. To give back, you borrowed something, so you give it back. It's really what you think of when you think of give. There's no surprises here that I can think of. Then the next word is li. Now, li is not a word you're going to find in the Hebrew dictionaries or lexicons. They don't do that with stuff like this because li is not literally a word. It's the lamed and the yod that have been put together, and so you pronounce it li, but the lamed is to, it's the word to, and the yod is me, so it's to me literally. And it's not really a word. It's just the combining of two letters together to mean to me. We don't have anything like that in English, so I realize it's a little weird probably. Our next word is hatrifani, which is feed me. This word is in Hefil. Again, it's a Hebrew thing that honestly there is no. People try to tell you, oh, it's the tenses. No, there's there are several different binyanim. Several, because you have the binyanim that go with the regular verbs, and then you have the binyanim that go with the irregular verbs. So there's more than most people think, and it's like a class of verb, and every one of them have tense in them. Every one of them have gender in them. So you can't break them up that way. There really is no equivalent in English. We don't do anything like this. But anyway, so it's not terribly important because I'll tell you what Hefil is in this case. It's to tear up food, to make someone eat, to feed. So the idea, the picture behind it is, think of you taking lettuce and you're tearing it all up, to make a salad. Think of it that way because you're doing it for the purpose of somebody eating, and specifically it's of tearing up food. So say you pluck an apple off a tree, that would be a good use of it because it's actually what the root taraf means, to pluck off. Not literally an apple, but to pluck something off like an apple. To be fresh is the idea because you plucked it off, and so it's fresh. So it's newly picked of a leaf of an apple of a whatever. To tear into pieces as a wild beast, even. It can be used of meat. If the wild beasts tear up an animal, it's fresh. So freshness comes with this idea. And it's metaphorically used of anger because you're rip-roaring, right? Anyway. Then it says lechem, so tear up the bread. Because this is really food. Well, they use it mostly of bread. Lechem is, we think of it literally as bread, but it's food. I just explained the tearing up, plucking from a tree or tearing up the lettuce. If you eat any of those things, that's lahem, that's food. That's why we still to this day in English we say let's break bread together. It doesn't mean you're going to get together and break bread, pass a loaf of bread around and just break it, does it? And it doesn't mean you're going to get together and eat a piece of bread either, does it? It means you're going to get together and have a meal. And it's exactly where we get this is from the Bible. Then it says, huki, which they have content. And there's a reason why they have content as the meaning in the English. Well, in this verse in the English translation. But it's from the word hok, that which is established or definite, an appointed portion of labor, a task, a defined limit, a boundary, an appointed time, an appointed law, a statute, an ordinance of the laws given by God to man, a decree of God, a custom observed as though it were the law. By the way, the Greek word used in the Septuagint for this very sentence and this very same Hebrew word in the Septuagint, when they translated it into Greek, they used the word autarkai, autarke, which is the Greek word which is generally translated contentment, content or contentment. Keep this in mind. Why would they say that? Well, listen, if you have a foundation, aren't you established? Aren't you immovable? Put a foundation, build a house on top of it. That house is content. It's everything it's supposed to be. It doesn't need anything else, right? That's what the law does. It's supposed to make us content. Hopefully I haven't given away the whole thing yet. Here's my amplified translation of Meshalim. That's Proverbs, if you recall, chapter 30, verse 8. Remove, receive, thrust, repel far away from me. Words, speeches, discourses, promises, precepts, edicts, royal mandates, oracles and counsels of vanity, emptiness, nothingness, and disappointed hope, and lies, falsehoods, and deceits. Do not give, deliver, yield, or scribe, or teach, allow, permit, utter, put, place, or impute. That's all the stuff that goes with give, by the way. Don't give to me poverty and riches. Tear up the fresh, newly plucked bread. Established, definite, appointed boundaries, laws, statutes, ordinance, decrees, and customs. Here's a little more down-to-earth translation. Remove far from me lies and words of vanity. Establish in me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with food of autarke, the food of contentment, the food of boundaries. The bread of autarke is the bread of boundaries, laws, statutes, ordinances, decrees, and customs. God's boundaries, laws, statutes, ordinances, decrees, and customs are the ingredients in the bread of contentment. Let's take a moment to look at the word autarke in the Sepharim Shaliach. That's the New Testament. So we're going to move to Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. The first Greek word is auch. Yes, they have a ch sound in Greek. Auch is the word. That's the negative article. It's like the Hebrew word lo. No or not. It just makes something negative. The next Greek word is ot, which is the equivalent to the Hebrew word ki. It's for or because. Then that's connected to kot is how I would say it. Most people say koth because somewhere along the way somebody stuck an H sound in there, a TH sound. I don't know why. It has nothing to do with these languages, but some translator did it, and people do that for some reason. But it's kot, not koth. And that's in place of the Hebrew word im. In this case, it's used for the word in English, that. It's in respect to, on this account, so that. So you get it, it's the word that. Our next word is Ustiresin. Ustiresin. It's in place of the Hebrew word mahsor. It's from want of anything or need. It's from the root haser, which is to diminish, to cut short, to be devoid of anything, to lack, to be without, to suffer want, to fail, to be lessened, to be wanting. These are not the wants as we think of them. These are our needs. We're lacking in our needs, not our wants. So we need to make that distinction and understand that this is about the lack of need, not the lack of the things we need, and not the just lack of things we want. You don't need an iPad. You need food. You need shelter, right? So let's make that distinction. Then this next word in Greek is Lego. So you need to let go of God's ego. No. You guys know that Lego probably is the equivalent of amar. That's to speak. It's to say. The primary signification is to bear forth, hence to bring to light. It's to shed light on the subject. Lego, word. All right. And the next word really is ego. I am not making this up. Lego, ego, but it's not let go of my ego. And here's the funny part: ego means me, so it's like let go of me. I'm just kidding. So you remember, Lego is to say, and then it's I will say, or right, okay, or say to me. It's one or the other. We'll figure it out. The next word is gar, like our old friend Dr. Gar. Hey, Dr. Gar. Which is used in place of the Hebrew word ki. It's for because. We've already had this word. Then it's emathon. Really, it's ematone, but again, somebody stuck the th in there. That's in place of lamad. And truly, if ever I really did have a favorite Hebrew word, this is it. Properly, it's to chastise, to strike, to beat with a rod, especially beasts of burden, hence to discipline, to train cattle, recruits for war. It's of training, of practice. It's my favorite word because the image behind it is a crooked stick. And the crooked stick, I don't know if you've ever seen one. Basically, it looks just like the lamed that you're looking at that they took from the Chaldeans, because it would be a long stick and it'd have a hook on the end. And that hook was used to grab a sheep as it was going to wander off. You grab it around the neck and turn him so he would come back to the herd. That's the lamed. So it's a picture of the shepherd's staff is what it really is. But it was also used, they used them with all of their animals. And if you had cattle, they always tend to want to, it's obvious that you should be going straight forward. And for whatever reason, they start trying to turn to the right or turn to the left. And so you pop them on the backside to get them to turn the right way or the wrong way. Well, that's not necessarily going to work the first time you do it. They're not going to actually know what happened to them. So you have to do it over and over and over again, right? It's of something that's repeated. And so they use this in teaching, they use this idea of teaching, not that you're beating somebody over the head to get it into their head to get them to learn, because that would be negative reinforcement. And yes, there were instructors, there were teachers that did teach using that style. But for the most part among the Jews, they used the positive reinforcement. It was from the idea of repeating, 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 repeating. These days, parents want to tell a child one time to do something or how to do something, and they think from that point on, that child should always do it the proper way at the proper time. And they wonder, why do I have to tell you? Well, don't you understand that the very word for teach, for learn, is to do it over and over and over and over again? Yes, if you want your children to learn, you have to do it over and over and over again. Ever wonder why your rabbi keeps saying the same things over and over and over? Anyway. Our next word in Greek is en, which is the equivalent of our English word in. It'd just be the bait in Hebrew, but it means in. So in this as opposed to not in that. Anyway, then the next word is ois, the next Greek word. It really means this or that, or they use it for whatsoever. Um, kind of weird, but if you spend any time with Greek, you can understand why they do that. Our next word is Amy. Amy, what you want to do? I'm in rare form today. Okay, no, that is how you pronounce it. It's in place of the word haya. It means I am. No, it just means I am. It's to be, to exist. We have followed by that autarkes. Seems familiar. Have we had that word already? Yes, the word ho. That's that word about laws and statutes and ordinances of laws given to man by God and stuff. Then it's enai, this is your last Greek word, and that's again for haya, to be, to exist. So here's my incredibly amplified translation. Remember, we're in Philippians 4:11. It is not because of any want or need that I am bringing this to light. I am not diminished, cut short, or devoid of anything. For I have been trained, chastised, beaten with the rod, and disciplined. For in this I am established. For in this being trained, chastised, beaten with a rod, and disciplined, for in that I am established. I have my appointed portions or tasks. I have defined limits and or boundaries. I have appointed times, set laws, statutes, and ordinances. I am content. Here's my more down to earth translation. I do not write these words because of need, but because through my learning I have autarkes. I have contentment. I have the law. I have a foundation. Let's look at Philippians 4:13. The first Greek word is panta, which is in place of the Hebrew word kol, which means all. It's the whole, totality, everything, everybody could be used that way. Ishuo is our next Greek word, and it's for the Hebrew word hoch, which is generally of strength. It's strength, power, might. It's of men and animals, used to the power of God, the ability, the power of doing anything. Then we have that word, that Greek word nen, which means in English. It's the bait in Hebrew. Then we have to, which is the definite article. That would be the hey. We would say ha in front of a word in Hebrew. It means the. It's the definite article. The word the can be used as that, still the definite article, for those of you who know anything about English grammar. Then we go to endunamounti, which is in place of pa'al. You heard that word before, because that's one of the binyanim, right? But it comes from a word that means something, right? It's to make, to do. Used only poetically in Hebrew. It's only used poetically. That's very important. So don't be taking something here literally. All right. So especially it is to make, to fabricate, i.e. an idol. To make, as in to dig a pit, because I got to give you some example, right? To produce, to create, to prepare. All right. So why is this important? Because you're not God. You don't create something out of nothing. We do have creative ability. We have creative minds. We think of things. We work things out. And because of that, we have iPads and whatnot, what have you, right? We are a creative human being, but we cannot create something out of nothing. We have to create something from something. So we are not like God in that respect, but we are in his image. And in his image, we can create something from something he left us. So we need to know that it's metaphoric, in other words, that it's, what was the word I used? Poetically. And then the last word is may. Now this one freaks me out because I don't know how the negative article can be me, myself, or I, as if it's the word ani in Hebrew. But it is. I mean, I really did some checking on this because it's always been the negative article in my mind, and I thought, has it ever been me, myself, and I? I looked it up, and it is. They put a little squiggly thing on top of it to indicate which is which, and I never used those little, it's like concatenation marks and stuff like that. I don't ever use that in Greek, so I've never noticed it before, I suppose. Here's my amplified translation. Not a lot to work with on this one. All strength, power, might, and ability to do, make, fabricate, produce, and or create is in me. Did you hear what I just said? Let's look at the more literal translation. I am strong in all things because of the ability which is in me. I am strong in all things because of the ability which is in me. Sound like I'm going Joel Osteen on you? I might, you never know. You would be hard-pressed to find a translation of this verse that doesn't say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me or gives me strength or something to that effect. The text does not say anything about Christ. Well, it's implied. No, it's not. Christ is added by translators either because some translator can't accept that we have any power in ourselves without the help of Christ, or because someone else wrote Christ in their interpretation and they were just following the crowd, which is usually the case. But if we were created in God's image, shouldn't we have this ability because of God? So why would you feel that it had to say Mashiach, Messiah, Christ? That said, you have no magical powers, none whatsoever, nor does Benny Hinn or Kenneth Copeland, Paul Crouch, or anybody else. All those people that say they have all this power to call things that are not as though they are, they're lying through their teeth. They're what we call in Hebrew bald-faced liars. What does that mean? Have I ever told you guys? Because, see, Gentiles were thought of as liars, and since the Gentiles shaved their face and Jews didn't, Gentiles were bald-faced liars. That's where it came from. It's not what your dictionary will tell you, but that is where that came from. All right, so you don't have any magical powers. You cannot heal the sick. You cannot give sight to the blind. You cannot cause the deaf ear to hear. You cannot raise the dead. Only God can do that. But everyone knows that God is able to take us out of our situation, right? No matter what it is. Except there's one thing about that. We should all know that we don't have that promise. If you don't believe me, let me give you an example. It's found in the book of Daniel. It's Daniel, if you didn't catch that. Probably did, right? It's in chapter 3, verses 17 and 18, which basically say, if this is one of the children, what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as everybody knows them in the Christian world, one of them's talking and they're saying to the king who's about to dump him in a big fiery pit, he says to the king, if it be so, in other words, if you're going to throw us in that fire, our God whom we serve is able. He is able to deliver us from the fiery burning furnace. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, he will. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods, nor worship the golden image which you have set up. These men knew that God was able, but they also knew that God was not obligated. The promise that you do have is this. If God doesn't take you out of your situation, he will take you through it. It makes no difference if the power to overcome is in us at birth and activated by learning the law, or if it is in us only after we learn the law. One thing is certain, we will not overcome anything and everything unless and until we learn the law. Do you need to overcome fear? Eat the bread of contentment, and the power will be inside you. Do you need to overcome your past? Eat the bread of contentment, and the power will be inside you. Do you need to overcome your current situation? Eat the bread of contentment, and the power will be inside you. Do you need to overcome anger, rage, depression, confusion, injustice? Eat the bread of contentment, and the power will be inside you. How does it work? Do you get up and command that which is not as though it were? No, you are not God. Do what Yeshua did. He gave us a really good example. Know what the Torah says about your situation. Then he keeps saying, it is written, it is written, it is everything that came his way, he knew what it said. Yeshua ate the bread of autarkes, the bread of contentment, the bread that gave him his boundaries, the laws by which he lived, the statutes, the ordinance, the decrees and customs that he obeyed. This is the bread that gives us all the strength to overcome and or do all things. There is no instant fix anything pill. God can and sometimes does help people out of their situation immediately, but for the most part, God chooses to walk through your situation with you. Why? Why? Well, to develop the power that is within you to overcome anything and everything. I just think it's important that we all eat the bread of autarkes, of contentment, boundaries, laws, statutes, ordinances, decrees, and customs before we start thinking that we are in the same place that the apostle was when he wrote this letter. Think about it. He said he could do all those things, and he had already told you that it was because he had eaten that bread. So if we're going to put ourselves in his place, do you now see that we have to do what he did to get to that place? Come on. It's not magical. It's sensible. It's logical. It is doable. I'm just saying. Shalom ve shalom.